Hello, I'm Chris, back up to Coding Workshop. This is episode 2 in the series dedicated to complete beginners. What we did in episode 1 was we had a little introduction to files and folders. I showed you a few shell commands that you could run in the terminal. So we want to continue with that in episode 2, show you a few more shell commands and explain a little bit more about what the shell actually is, and also maybe write a script or two. So let's delve in and run a terminal. Oops. Okay, so this is a terminal or a shell. Now, the difference between the two, the shell is just a program that allows you to input commands via the keyboard. Basically, these commands tell the operating system what you'd like to do. Like in our case, from episode 1, we're telling. I'm trying to talk and type at the same time. We're telling the shell to run this command and giving it this text. So, and as you remember, what echo does is display a line of text. Now, again, in the second line here, all we've done is told the shell that we want to run the man command or the man program, and we're giving it one parameter, which is which command we want help or the manual page for. So yeah, that's the shell. Now a terminal is just a window emulator. So basically, what's displaying this window and outputting this text is the terminal. The terminal is just like almost an interface to the shell. Before the days of graphical user interfaces, GUIs or GUIs, the shell was the only way of communicating, if you like, with Unix. Right, so let's show you something else. So if I now type this, what do you think should appear? Probably not what you expect. And that's a clue as to what's happening with these words that we type after the command that we want the shell to run. Now, if I do it this way, oops, wrong key, this way instead, that actually does what we want it to do. Now, the clue here is that these commands, this text that we write after the command that we're telling the shell to run, is actually interpreted by the shell, not by the command itself. So the command doesn't see this whole text. The command gets the text after the shell has interpreted it. Now, the double quotes are telling the shell to basically literally take what's in between those quotes and pass it to the echo command, which is why it works in this case. But in this case, the shell says, okay, you want to run this command and these are the parameters that you want to pass. So it passes hello as the first parameter to echo and world as the second one. So what is a shell? Let's figure out where the shell actually lives and what it consists of. There is another special character in a shell, which is the $sign. Now, there's a concept called environment variables. Now, in a shell, there's a particular environment. You refer to environment variables using the $command, and you can actually set environment variables as well, which I'll probably show you in a minute. Now, there's a particular environment variable called the shell, which basically tells you which shell you're running. Now, that's told us that there's a file in /bin called bash, which is the shell that we're currently running. If I ls that file, there you go. That's where the file lives, and this is the file. This is its size. This is there's a few other information here over which we won't go into right now, but that's bash, and that basically contains all the code that implements the shell. So when we were typing echo here and passing it these parameters, it was this program that is running the shell to interpret these and run this sub-command echo. There is a slightly different way of getting the same information, which is again another use of the dollar command, which is to list parameters. Now the parameter 0 is basically the shell that is running, interpreting this whole line of text. And again, of course, it's bash. Now this gives you a little bit less information than what's contained in the environment variable. The way that you would have to extract that would be to use the which command. And that basically locates a command. So if you run a command but you're not quite sure where that command is living on the file system, you do that. Okay, so let's create a script. So what is a script? A script is basically just a list of commands that you wish to run in sequence. Scripts are sometimes used for repetitive tasks, so you might find that when you log into a system, you may run a bunch of commands one after the other every time you log in, and it's much easier to put all those commands together in a file and have that file run by the shell, so that you don't have to do that typing all the time. That's one simple use of a script. Scripts are used in many different ways. So let's try and put the echo command that we used earlier into a shell script. You remember from the first lesson that we could use this special character to redirect output. So what we'd like to do now is edit a file, or basically create this text in a file that becomes a script. So first of all, let's just create a file as we did in lesson 1. You remember we used the redirection command to create a file, and let's call this file my first script. Now if we go to the File Explorer and find that file, there it is, and open it in our text editor. This is basically an easier way of doing this while it's our first attempt. And in here we'll just add the command echo as we had. I really need to remap that key as it was before. And save that file. Oops. There it is, and it should contain that text that we just put in there. Now the cat command concatenates files and prints on the standard output. Now, the cat command is very useful for if you want to see the contents of files. So as you can see, what we just typed in that file is echo hello world. Right now, how do we get the shell to run the contents of this file as commands? One way of doing it is basically run bash my first script, and there you go, it echoes hello world. Alright, so that's probably one of the most basic scripts you could ever produce, but I hope it gives you a good idea of what scripts are and how they are run, and a little bit more information about things like commands and how they interact with the shell, and what's called the command line, which is basically this, which will come in very useful once we get into writing our own code to parse things like command line and perform operations in the shell, which we'll move on to in the next episode when we may do a bit of Python. So yeah, I hope that was useful and interesting. If you have any ideas or feedback, please put it in the comments, and I'll see you in a bit.